We're nearing the end of May, and the Illini still have multiple scholarships to give out. And pundits are now starting to wonder, did Brad Underwood mismanage the rosters this offseason? Locked on Illini, let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you all for joining me once again. Thank you for making Locked On Illini your first listen every single day. Just remember, we're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And again, I just want to thank you. This was the first full week of the show, and our podcasts have doubled in listens every single day. And that just is such a rewarding feeling. And I want to say thank you for that. So once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, let people know you're watching, because it really does matter, in particular with the algorithm. As for today, we've got a lot to talk about. I want to hear what you think in the comment section. Did Brad Underwood mismanage our roster this offseason? Also, we're going to talk about the new ruling in the NCAA, where the NCAA and teams will actually start paying players now. And of course, as always, on Fridays, we're going to drop some news and notes on stories that we weren't able to get throughout the week. Today's episode is going to be brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So Brad Underwood is a head coach that has never really shied away from change. He played a very aggressive trapping style of defense at Stephen F. Austin and Oklahoma State. And once he got to Illinois and that style of defense wasn't working, well, he basically readjusted his whole philosophy on the defensive end. He's built teams around guards, and he's built teams around dominant big men. The 2022-2023 team had a 5-star, the highest rated recruit that Illinois has had in years, along with a lot of other highly rated players, such as Jaden Epps. And that team ended up being one of the more disappointing teams of our lifetime. Obviously, there's been worse teams, but those teams didn't come in with the expectations that particular team did. Sky Clark left, as we all know, mid-season. Jaden Epps started pouting. He didn't like getting yelled at by Brad Underwood, and so he really wasn't welcome back the following season. And I think Brad learned a lesson that year. And because of his lack of success in the postseason, I think he decided to aggressively change strategies from going hard after these young hotshot players. Now, keep in mind, everyone thought in high school, Jaden Epps was going to be the typical Underwood guy, gritty. Turns out that wasn't the case at all. Epps didn't mesh well with that coaching staff in the least bit, and Epps only lasted 1 year here. So Brad, last year, adjusted his philosophy a little bit. He acquired 3 grad transfers and a senior, basically telling us that he was going to go all in on his roster construction. And it worked. Last year's, the 2023-24 Illini team was, in my opinion, the most fun offensive team I've seen in my lifetime since I started watching. We had a man who should have finished second in Player of the Year voting, Terrence Shannon Jr. Marcus Damask was a grad transfer. Justin Harmon, grad transfer. Quincy Guerrier, grad transfer. One of the more fun teams that in all of college basketball. I've talked about this before. Well, things have changed. Now, coming into this offseason, there's 2 names, Ty Rodgers and Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn. Those are the only guys that are going to be returning from last year's team. Brad and the staff have really been working overtime at this point, trying to get enough players on the roster next year to almost field a team. We still have 3 or 4 open scholarships last time I checked. And now, I mean, let's be honest, a lot of the big names in the transfer portal have already been snatched up by other teams. And so now people are wondering, especially on the Illini Twitter in particular, the Sleepers boys, Greg Waddle, he talked about how his bold prediction for the Illini this upcoming year was that they'd miss the tournament. And a lot of the concern is understandable. I like Ben Hummerkaus. I like Trey White. I really like Kylan Boswell. But is the alpha there? Who's going to be the best player on our team next year? Last year's team, I was content with the acquisitions that we had. I liked Quincy, although I know he had struggled in his last couple of years at Oregon. Justin Harmon, Marcus Domask seemed like decent role players. I didn't think we got anything special, but I still felt that our ceiling was super high because of Terrence Shannon Jr. We had the alpha on that team. I knew our team would go as far as he would carry us. My concern for this upcoming season is I don't know who that alpha is. Now, granted, the month of May is just about over, but not quite. And so Brad and the staff, they may be making a splash here in the next couple of weeks to make this whole point moot. We know they aggressively went after AJ Storr. We know they aggressively went after David Jones. Had any of those two guys decided to commit, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Those two guys could have filled that Terrence Shannon Jr. role. Right now, probably the most productive player from last year that's going to be on our team is Ben Hummerkaus, probably, stats-wise. He's the guy we're probably going to expect the most from. But let's be honest, we just dealt with Marcus Domask. Our expectations for Hummerkaus are going to be unreasonably high. And I don't know if that's fair to him. I don't know if he is that type of player. I'm pretty sure he's not. But he might have to be. Kylan Boswell. He's entering his 3rd season, but he's never been the best player on his basketball team. So it begs the question, did Brad make a mistake this offseason? I'm not sure. I don't know the answer. What do you guys think? I want to hear what you guys think. My thinking right now is obviously we're still going after the kid in Europe. I'm going to try to say his name, Kasparas Jakushonis. This is not the first time you've heard me mispronounce the name. This won't be the last. I'm sorry. That's just something I'm very bad at. And I've watched tape on the kid, and he seemed really good. I think he had 17 assists a day or two ago. That's the type of guy I want on our basketball team. But should we even get his commitment? I don't know if that necessarily raises the ceiling of our team. I don't think he's that alpha. And I use that word a lot, so I apologize in advance. He's a very good player, but I think he can be a very good college basketball player. I think Kasparas would be a better college basketball player next year than even Igor Demine would have been. But I still worry about the ceiling of this team. Right now, as is, I don't know if what Greg Waddle said about his bold prediction about the Illini not making the tournament is as crazy of a thought as some Illini fans want to think it is. And that's disappointing. I think right now, Illinois and Illinois fans, and I think Brad would tell you this too, our minimum expectation every single year moving forward needs to be to make that NCAA tournament. And who knows? Last year, I thought we were going to be a good team. The national media, I think the preseason polls had us at 4. We finished 2nd. And that's without our best player for 6 of those games. Brad might be pulling another rabbit out of his hat this season. I'm at the point where I shouldn't doubt Brad, but I do think the fact that Trey White, Kerry Booth, Colin Boswell, Jake Davis all have years remaining beyond this one shows us that he may have recognized that he went a little too aggressive last year. No regrets, of course. An Elite Eight run, that's what you want. That's got to be the type of goal that you strive for every single year. But sometimes it's nice to have a little cohesion on your team as well. A little chemistry. And that's why I think right now it's too early to see or to say if Brad has mismanaged the roster. But the national media is paying attention. And we're all going to find out soon enough. Next up, we're going to talk about the big ruling on Thursday evening that the NCAA and teams are going to be able to pay the players. But first, FanDuel. It's a winner-take-all in the NBA and NHL. FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Well, it seems that not a week goes by nowadays without the landscape of college athletics changing. And on Thursday evening, a very monumental change was announced when the NCAA announced that it had basically agreed with teams to be able to start paying players. And I'm going to go ahead and quote the ESPN article just so I don't mix anything up. It says here, the NCAA and its leagues are moving forward with a multi-billion-dollar agreement to settle 3 pending federal antitrust cases. The NCAA will pay more than $2.7 billion in damages over 10 years to past and current athletes, sources told ESPN. Sources said that the parties also have agreed to a revenue sharing plan allowing each school to share up to roughly $20 million per year with its athletes. Now, what does this mean? And who's this good for and who's this bad for? I'm just going to say it. Who's this bad for? Fans who grew up watching college sports. I'm putting myself in that category. I was born in the 80s myself. So the sport that I kind of grew up to love, the at least perceived amateur aspect of it, that's gone. It's been gone for a while. But every single day, it's showing you that it's all a sham. Whatever you saw before is no longer the case. Now, it's a completely different ballgame. Now, again, us as Illinois fans, we're very lucky. We're very lucky that for 2 reasons, really, that we're in the Big Ten, a founding member of the Big Ten, and we have a viable football program that's going to kind of help subsidize all these payments. Imagine being a team in the Missouri Valley Conference, a strictly predominantly basketball conference. Where are those schools going to be able to conjure up that kind of money? They're really not. Those schools with football programs, and in particular, let's just be honest, this is the way every decision that's been made has been going anyway. The SEC and the Big Ten are simply going to be able to pull away even more on the competitiveness level. Another reason we're lucky. One of the guys quoted in this very article is Josh Whitman, our athletic director. He was quoted as saying, "We recognize that we're just on the front end of this entire process," said Illinois athletic director Josh Whitman, who recently took over as the chair of the NCAA's Division I Council. "There's a lot to be sorted out as we try to really wrap our arms around some of the details that we're putting in place now." And remember, I did say this a couple of days ago, that when he was elevated to this position, it was a huge boon for Illinois and Illinois athletics, because he knows what changes are around the corner, and he can best prepare Illinois to be able to handle those changes. Now, let's go back to who's this good for. Football players, basketball players. More than likely, you're going to be able to get paid no matter where you go to school. It won't just be, with the Georgias or the Ohio States who are just paying top dollar. For the most part, it seems like that the wealth is going to be spread around a little bit more between all the teams, especially with everyone doing a little revenue sharing of the 20 million that I referenced earlier. Who's this bad for? What about the guy on the tennis team, the golf team, volleyball, the non-revenue sports? I think those are at risk at this point if they're not bringing in money. So what happens? Do they stop being official sports, or do they basically go down to a club level? I would be worried about that. It's drastic changes like this that, unfortunately, again, there seems to be new changes every single week at this point, and sure, it's getting tiresome, and trust me, it's not over. In a month or two, I'm sure we're going to be hearing about a conclusion to what's going on with Florida State and the ACC, and then who knows, Clemson might be following up afterwards, and then Miami's going to have to make a decision. It's a never-ending story, and I'm just going to say that I'm glad that we have history as a founding member of the Big Ten. We have Josh Whitman on our side. And moving forward, we just have no choice. We're going to have to look at this as a lower level professional league, because that's all it is. It's a professional league with 18 to 22-year-olds. If you're okay with that, fine. If you're not okay with that, it might be time to find another passion. Now, speaking of passion, I've watched almost every minute of the NBA playoffs this year, at least on the Western side, following Dallas and the Dallas Mavericks. Side note, I think this is going to be the year that they win it all. What I do know is that there's 4 teams remaining, and we're going to have a brand new champion this year. And you can tell by checking out the atmosphere of those arenas. Now, granted, I don't live close to any of those arenas, but if you do, and you're a fan of one of the 4 teams and you want to go to the game, I highly recommend the Gametime app. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime app takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem Locked On College for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. It's now time for one of my favorite segments every single week, and that's just a Friday news dump. Obviously there's stories that are happening every single day, and I wish I could cover them all, but I can't. This is a half-hour show, and I got 3 segments each episode, so I kind of jot down notes to kind of go back and make sure I kind of talked about them on Friday. First and foremost, the baseball game earlier today between Illinois and Iowa. I don't know if you saw this baseball game, but let's just say it's a bad day to be an umpire. Illinois scored 2 runs in the top of the 10th to go up 4-2. And then Iowa at the bottom of the 10th ended up loading the bases. And basically, I don't know how else to describe it. Illinois took a grounder and threw it to second base, and that was an out while the run scored. But the run didn't score because the umpires called an interference call, which, quite honestly, at that point in my life, was the worst interference call I had ever seen in my life. What happens afterwards is Illinois gets out. We end up winning 4-2. They will be playing, I believe the game is not quite over yet, but it looks like they'll be playing Michigan on Friday evening. Now, I say that was the worst interference call I've seen up until that point, because if you do watch baseball and you're a White Sox fan, the way your guys' game lost tonight, and I'm not even a White Sox fan, that was completely ridiculous. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, and even if you're not a White Sox fan, I'm not. Go Cubs. Take a look at that clip because it's disgusting. Other notes. Nico Moretti commits to FAU. I'm really happy for Nico. I did kind of silently hope that he would be welcomed back in an Illinois uniform. I think he would have been a nice guy to have in the development system, just to have another guy returning from last year's team. But I don't know if he's an upper level performer in college basketball. I think he would have been a solid, guy to have come in every other game or so, but in order for Nico to maximize his talent, his college experience, I'm glad he kind of stepped down a level. FAU is a fantastic basketball team, and I think he's going to do great stuff down there. And we also have Brad Underwood was elected to join, I believe, what's the Coaches versus Cancer Council. I'm glad he's been obviously working with that organization for few years now, and so him kind of taking that next step and joining the organization, that was really nice to see. Illinois versus Nebraska is going to be a night game. I don't know how you guys feel about night games, or a Friday night game. That's what I meant. The Big Ten basically announced that they're going to have about a dozen Friday night games this upcoming season, and our venture out to Lincoln is going to be one of them. I don't know why. It seems like every time we play Nebraska, it's always under the lights, but I will say I'm glad that this particular game is going to be one on the road, a game after, I believe we play Central Michigan the week before, so hopefully that should be a victory. And even though we do lose a day of practice, I'm hoping the CMU game isn't too stressful, and that we should be able to take on Nebraska, who's going to be a very good team. And we'll have my good friend Justin Adams from the Voice of College Football Nebraska channel on here at some point to preview that game. Terrence Shannon Jr. joins Clutch. It looks like he's made his choice in his agency, and I think it makes sense to join Clutch right now. The one headed by Rich Paul, LeBron's good friend. I think that's kind of like the coolest name on the streets, if you want to say. And, he's in good hands with them over there. 4-star women's basketball player Cameron Kitchen has the Illini in her top 6. I'm a big fan of Shauna Green. I'm trying to get in contact with somebody from the women's side to, talk about their sport on this show. I think the turnaround of the women's basketball team has been amazing. Women's basketball in general, because of Caitlin Clark, has just kind of entered more so in the mainstream, and it's kind of coincided with Shauna Green turning the Illini women around. The job she's done, in my opinion, she's the best coach that the university has, and that says something because, between Dan Hartlib, Brett Bielema, Mike Small, Brad Underwood, we have some really good coaches here, but I think Shauna Green, she's right up there. And then Brandon Podzinski was named to the All-NBA All-Rookie First Team. I wasn't sure if I needed to add this one at the end. I know half of you are going to say no, half of you are going to say yes. I will say that I hope that this is the last time I have to reference him. I know he's a lightning rod of debate amongst Illini fans. Simply just be happy for the kid. Okay. He was a miss on Underwood's part. He didn't show what he showed at Santa Clara in practice. Otherwise, he would have stayed with the Illini. But just remember that he wanted more minutes on a team that had a lot of good quality guards here with the Illini. So I really don't blame Underwood for not promising him anything. But at the same time, if we're going to sit here and give him credit for finding the Georgies, the Marcus Domasks, we can also sit here and kind of admit when, he may have missed on one. And Brandon is certainly one of those. Thank you again for joining me this week on Locked On Illini. If you don't mind, hit that like button on your way out. Hit that subscribe button on your way out. If you're listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, please hit that subscribe button. There's a brand new show. We just finished our first full week. And so we're trying to get the word out. We're trying to catch up to the other Locked On channels and really show the Locked On network that their investment into having more Illini content was worth it. I'll be seeing you next, Monday or Tuesday. Make sure you all enjoy your Memorial Days. One of my favorite holidays because to me, it really introduces the idea that summer is here. So until then, enjoy your weekend. Have that barbecue. Hopefully we'll have some positive basketball news on our front. Hopefully we'll hear something about Zachary Franklin, who's going to be in Washington. Either way, I'll be here, and I'll see you early next week. ILL. Love you guys.